Dear Kenyans, let us now look at the Punitive Finance Bill 2026-2027. This is the worst finance bill in the history of Kenya. It does not deserve the light of the day. The bill is deeply detrimental. It increases heavy taxation pressure, doubles compliance pressure, and escalates household costs. We thought it would have been expanded the economy and cushioned the ordinary mwananchi. Our first concern is the continued pursuit of unrealistic revenue targets, despite a history of persistent underperformance and an underperforming economy. The government revenue collections have consistently fallen short of targets, yet the response has been to introduce new taxes and illegal levies rather than addressing inefficiencies, broadening the tax base, or stimulating economic growth. This creates a cycle where businesses and citizens are repeatedly asked to shoulder a heavier burden to compensate for unrealistic fiscal planning. The second concern is a proposal to move certain products from zero-rated to VAT exempt status, including solar products, electric mobility equipment, locally assembled mobile phones, and animal feeds. While this may appear neutral on paper, it effectively increases costs because producers can no longer recover input VAT. The inevitable result is higher prices for consumers, farmers, and businesses. At a time when Kenya should be encouraging renewable energy, agricultural productivity, and digital inclusion, these proposals move in the opposite direction. The proposed 16% VAT on digital payment service provider commissions is another regressive measure. Kenya has become a global leader in financial inclusion because mobile money and digital payments have reduced transaction costs and expanded access to financial services. There will be no more pain at there will be more pain at M-Pesa shops and ATM machines. Taxing these services will increase costs for traders, SMEs, schools, hospitals, and ordinary citizens who rely on mobile payments. And ultimately, these costs will be passed on to the consumers and could reverse years of progress in financial inclusion. Further, the proposal to increase excise duty on mobile phones from 10% to 25% is particularly damaging to young people and low-income households. Mobile phones are no longer luxury goods. They are essential tools for education, businesses, communication, financial services, content creation for youth and the Gen Zs, and job searching. Increasing their costs will widen the digital divide and disproportionately affect students, entrepreneurs, and rural communities. We certainly know the finance bill also proposes a 30% growth withholding tax for what is called non-resident landlords, but effectively it affects the Kenyans in diaspora. While intended to raise revenue, the practical effect is likely to be higher rents for businesses and commercial tenants as landlords pass this cost to occupiers. This will increase operating costs for businesses and contribute to higher consumer prices. This is unfairly targeting our diaspora communities who should be investing back home while they work abroad. Where do you want these Kenyans to retire to? Or where do you want them to invest? Equally concerning is a proposal introducing a 60% minimum deemed dividend threshold. This measure risks penalizing businesses that retain earnings for expansion, working capital, debt repayment, and an investment. Rather than encouraging growth and job creation, firms will be forced to distribute funds that would otherwise be used for investment. From a governance perspective, one of the most troubling provisions is the proposed removal of protections against agency notices during active tax appeals. This will allow tax authorities to freeze bank accounts and enforce collection actions while disputes are still before tribunals or courts. Such powers will cripple businesses before they have an opportunity to be heard, undermining due process, investor confidence, and the constitutional principle of fair administrative action. The finance bill further proposes tax filing timelines from June 30th to April 30th and introduces stricter objection deadlines, which include weekends and public holidays. increasing compliance costs for businesses and taxpayers. These measures may appear administrative, but they affect businesses that lack the resources of larger corporations and will struggle to comply within shortened timelines. The cumulative effect of these proposals is deeply worrying. At a time when Kenyans are already grappling with a high cost of living, rising statutory deductions, expensive credit, unemployment, and weak economic growth, the Finance Bill 2026 places additional pressure on households and businesses. Instead of stimulating production, encouraging investment, and creating jobs, many of the proposals risk making Kenya a more expensive place to live, work, invest, and do business. We strongly hold that a people-centered finance bill would focus on expanding the tax base, sealing revenue leakages, promoting investment, protecting taxpayers' rights, supporting farmers and businesses, and creating an environment where economic growth and naturally generates sustainable tax revenues. Unfortunately, the current bill leans too heavily toward extracting more from an already strained economy, while doing too little to address the structural weaknesses that continue to undermine growth and prosperity. The finance bill represents a continuation of a failed philosophy. Whenever revenue targets are set, the government responds by introducing new taxes, new levies, new compliance obligations, and new penalties instead of confronting waste, corruption, and inefficiency within government itself. The danger is clear. Kenya cannot tax its way to prosperity. As Winston Churchill argued, a nation trying to tax itself into prosperity is like a man standing in a bucket and trying to lift himself up by the handle. The government of Mr. William RUTO will present the budget estimates for the next financial year on Thursday, 11th June 2026. Later on, the Finance Bill 2026/2027 will be tabled to the National Assembly for debate. But what is in this budget and finance bill for Wanjiku? Both are a twin evil. The Finance Bill 2026 is taxing Kenyans into poverty. It is a killer and a threat to common mwananchi. It will break households while stifling the freedom of Kenyans and violating the very soul of our nation. The Constitution of Kenya 2010. It is a budget for a 50 regime billionaires and 1 trillionaire out of our sweat and blood. The two documents are not a rescue plan for the common mwananchi, but an increased tax burden on workers, consumers, farmers, businesses, manufacturers, SMEs, border operators, mama mbogas, and the youth who are the very soul of our nation. In my remarks, I will demonstrate how this is so. We, the Democracy for the Citizens Party, DCP, affirm that a national budget must be a plan for prosperity, a blueprint for opportunity, and a statement that gives priority to the people and not a cake for a few elites. We strongly hold that a people-centered budget must give priority to affordable food, access to education, affordable health care, affordable farm inputs, support small and medium enterprises, and support household savings and expand opportunities for our young people. Additionally, it must fully adhere to the Constitution of Kenya, and in particular Articles 220 and 221 on public participation. This budget does none of this. In fact, it does the exact opposite by violating the Constitution and in fact waging a terrifying economic war. The budget estimates before us at Kenya shillings 4.82 trillion is completely out of touch with Wanjiku. The projected revenue is about Kenya shillings 3.67 trillion, leaving a deficit of Kenya shillings 1.144 trillion. We have a clueless regime led by an elite cabal that continues to vomit on our feet and display their ill-gotten wealth. They are presenting to us, the people of Kenya, a budget with an intention to borrow Kenya shillings 3.13 billion per day. This, in simple terms, translates to an average borrowing spree of Kenya shillings 125 million per hour. This is the money you see roofing State House, traveling overseas in luxurious jets, being dished at State House to bribe voters, and in EUDA campaign lorries, while the balances are blown in helicopters, in needless flights and charters. What if this money was channeled to our schools, hospitals, and road?
Nikiripotia Kamachu TV, itaripota 001 wa Chombi Kamachu.